There it goes.
Okay, fantastic.
Welcome back to the shit show. I'm Robert.
I'm Heather.
I'm glad that you're with us. We need to be a little bit more serious with that because this is the shit show and it really matters. It's important. There are important topics covered here.
Exactly. So. The name is indicative of we're taking things incredibly seriously.
Yeah. How did we come up with the shit show, right? Because we do touch on pretty serious stuff, but
we do. But our clients, that's what they call their lives.
Shit shows.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Makes sense.
And since this is kind of meant for the regular folks looking for a couples counselor, but then also as part of our training program, we can use it to help our graduate interns learn some new stuff as they're embarking on trying to do what it is that we've been doing for a decade or two. So, yeah.
Works. So, as far as topics and feedback, always looking for the feedback. Make sure if you have questions, ideas, things that you'd like to talk about, situations that you're in that you want us to process on video, let us know.
Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun, I think. It'd be fun. So, but as far as where we're at today, what did we talk about? Boundaries? I'm going to the magic shit show.
The magic shit show.
Welcome.
Let me see. So we got roles and relationships and expectations. We got everything is on a spectrum. Boundaries, where you end and I begin. Any one of those sound?
They're all really good. I think I'm gonna I don't necessarily have a preference, but one that continually comes up for me inside of counseling is trying to recognize and understand where somebody else is. And so the idea that everything is on a spectrum makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
So scaling, Likert scale stuff, kind of recognizing pain thresholds, that kind of thing, tolerance. And so if I say anger meter, 100%. However you want to measure it, everything, like everybody falls on it on a spectrum to one degree or another with their experiences. And so if we say we're mad, being able to interpret what a mad is, because my mad might not be your mad. And so inside of that, there's a lot of communication breakdown.
Well, and then even with the Likert scale, and if you don't go to that place where you actually identify what each of those numbers are, I could say that I'm mad. You could say that you're mad. We think we're on the same page, and yet we find on a scale 1 to 10, mad for me is a 4, and mad for you is an 8.
Sure.
Yeah. So how do we deal with that?
Communication. taking the time to really understand one another and recognize what triggers are, and this is leading into an anger situation. And when I thought about the topic of everything is on a spectrum, I didn't just mean it from an emotional perspective, though all emotion I believe falls on a spectrum. And there are a lot of emotions or emotional words that we use that kind of qualify different points on that spectrum. So I could be very happy, or I could be joyous, or I could be, happy and joy is pretty much all I know.
Elated, excited, jubilant.
Her vocabulary is better. But looking at what that means and how to communicate that and better understand one another. And my mind is totally spacing on the spectrum piece of it, because I truly believe everything in nature exists on a spectrum, right? That goes back to science, and I go science more so than not. And so
let's talk about what that might look like. You are sitting down with your spouse and you have a conversation, and a lot of what we talk about and what we are going to be talking about here on this show is the intentionality of having these conversations. Shit shows happen in marriages and relationships because of, for the most part, lack of communication. Now, it makes things much more difficult when there isn't that connection piece and that commitment. What we're focusing on, even right now, today, is that communication piece. Being intentional and sitting with your loved ones across from you and expressing to them that you think it would benefit how you connect and how you relate to one another by understanding what you mean and what they mean about the spectrum of maybe stress. I know we said anger before, but a stress scale, because not everybody has a problem with anger, I guess. Maybe more people have a problem with stress. And so how you define that can really be useful in explaining your position, because everybody has a position, right? Without really having to go into depth with what that means. If we look at a Likert scale,
right.
So scale of 1 to 10, and we have this understanding that one side is lower and one side is higher, right? Or good and bad, or something that you want, something that you don't want, right?
Absolutely, and
more or less,
good or bad, and I think that deserves a pause, because you look at the idea, and I actually read a quote somewhere this week. When you start looking at emotions as either good or bad, it's a disservice. Emotions by nature are neutral, and so there's a the way I'll verbalize it is there's a perceived negative or a perceived positive emotion, but ultimately, and I'll steal your words going back to the very beginning, right? When you have that perceived negative, it's that something ain't rightedness about the situation, about what's going on around you, and because it's not right, we perceive it as negative, but in actuality, it's actually a very positive thing, because it's letting you know that something needs to change. So it's adaptive, and you need to pay attention to it and stop judging it, understand where that's coming from, and please put that one in. Don't judge it, understand it. And I've said it before, I believe, on this show. But yeah, it's about really getting into what's going on for the other person and seeing that as clear as you possibly can.
So you sit down and you talk about whatever is the scale that you're marking, and then you define each of those things. If we're talking about stress, I don't want to say no stress, because you need stress to function. But if we're looking at something that you're trying to actively manage within the relationship, because when you're stressed out, you become aggressive, or when you're stressed out, you isolate. And so if it's something that you've communicated with your spouse that I need help in managing my stress, so it can be one of those things where things are going really well and I'm stressed out beyond belief, and I'm incapable of managing, and I'm going to lose it, and whatever lose it is you can define. But then going through the 1 through 9, each of those markers and defining each of those can be really helpful. Not just to give it some definition, but giving it a word context that you can, context that you can connect to. And then all along the way, and then sharing that with your spouse, that's actually a really good conversation, because stress is seen a lot of different ways by a lot of different people. And how you put that term to how you define whatever my 8 is, where I still am able to manage myself emotionally, but I'm getting to the point where I'm becoming unmanageable. And I think we've clarified before that when we do a Likert scale, a 10 is something that we don't want to get, where your emotions have become unmanageable and you get to that place where you become disrespectful either to self or someone else.
Right. And I think kind of what you're alluding to is that threshold position, right?
Yes, threshold.
There comes like that point of no return, and so you hit a point and it's like it's a foregone conclusion, the outcome of where I'm headed. And so with that, I mean, you can enter in, this is a really common word, but triggering, right? How do I define I'm being triggered versus I'm past my threshold because I've been triggered for too long, or I've been lived in this state of arousal and I can't do it anymore, and I'm collapsing or imploding or exploding. But being able to recognize in and of self, and that's where paying attention to yourself. So this is the idea that when you're looking at the success of your relationship, if you aren't looking at yourself first inside of that solution, then you're doing something wrong. So recognizing where your scale starts and finishes, or on any of the scale, that's your responsibility. And asking for help within that is your responsibility. And that's where I think relationship breakdown is, because sometimes we get into patterns where we continually turn to our partners for help, and we keep reaching and that help isn't there. And so then we stop reaching, or we start bridging into the superlatives, right? You never
Yeah.
answer. You never do what I ask. I continue. You always turn me down, whatever else it is. And so then that's an expression of being tapped out on an emotional scale.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. And most of us are in the process of wanting to do our best to avoid that. And this is a tool.
I think some people are in the process of actively participating in it.
Well, that's the shit show part.
They over-identify with it, and they're so fed up and they're so subscribed to the idea that it can't get better because I've tried that, I've done that, nothing works, and then their identity starts to wrap around that.
Time.
Yeah, it just becomes all-encompassing of the situation where you can't see past your nose because you're so certain you're right, and you're so convinced that your needs aren't going to be met that there is no opportunity for change or success.
I really like practicing this. I'm getting really good at it, right?
Oh man. but I mean, I think that's what comes into my office, you know, because everybody that comes into my office is pretty intelligent, pretty aware of things. I mean, they see their situation, they have some unhealthy patterns, sure, not always, but the listening piece isn't there, the understanding piece isn't there, and when one isn't being listened to, then communication shuts down, and it becomes that maladaptive. And this goes back to video 1 for me.
Yeah.
You know, like it just comes back to you're not hearing me, I can't hear you, and so we're like sitting there in a stalemate, and I'm not budging, you're not budging, because I don't trust that you're going to continually show up for me the way I need you to show up for me.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? Why not just get a divorce? Like, why sit in that state of suffering?
Yeah, that's a tangent. It's not a matter of the question. It's I'm actively choosing to stay in this relationship that I'm miserable in. That statement. So, and I encourage my clients a lot too. Instead of asking that question, you know, why do I stay in this relationship? Instead, making the statement, I'm choosing to stay in this relationship. I'm choosing to not make any changes or encourage change, and so therefore. And my clients don't like this. It's like, you must really like this. You must really like the drama and the crap that you go through every single day. And we reiterate it from session to session. It is said in a way to get them motivated to argue with the fact that they don't like the position that they're in and they want it to change.
Yep. So what you just said, it brings up, if you have the experience where you're asking yourself a question, that question very specifically, why do I stay in this relationship? Get in the habit, if you're asking yourself a question, don't make it a rhetorical question. Make sure you answer the question, which is what Heather just did, is she gave you the answer. I'm staying in this relationship because ultimately there is something that I'm getting out of it, but I'm choosing to focus on what I'm not getting. And that is that is part of the problem. If you're viewing your relationship as devoid of anything positive or good, you're not being honest with yourself. Or if it is devoid of anything positive or good, then really answer yourself, why am I staying in this relationship? Because there's absolutely zero benefit to me. I think you're lying to yourself that there isn't a benefit there. It's probably a maladaptive or a very unhealthy benefit that you're getting. But be honest with yourself and say, yeah, I'm staying there because I'm financially dependent on the other individual. No. Right? Sorry, that was pretty.
No, I because I hear it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right? We're so our finances are so entwined. We have this, we have that. And so that is the reason you're saying. So you're saying for the comfort of the finances versus the intimacy or the connection that it is that you're missing. And there's a trade-off there. Okay, if you choose to stay in finances for financial reasons, I'm going to go ahead and let you own that. Like, you don't have to do that. But,
well, and we stay because we're hopeless romantics, we as humans. And if we
broad brush. Sorry.
I did that on purpose. The way we're built is when we make a choice to connect with our person, that hope is one of those things that is at the forefront, that we are looking for and longing for, the deepening in the relationship and the connection. And we're built that way as humans to want that and to need that. And so the answer to that question, why do I stay in this relationship, is because I still have hope that at some point either you are going to change or my heart is going to change or something is going to change that will will create the atmosphere that will allow me to be able to be satisfied within this relationship. The problem with that is it is insane if we believe that doing the same thing over and over again is going to get us a different result. It requires change. It requires intentionality, and it requires us to adjust what we always have done. And this is really what I realize, but what we have done in the past in order to create a different result.
Yeah, we can. Let's continue. If you want to continue to pick that apart.
Well, we
might.
We might. Yeah, let's slice it thinner. Let's finish for now, and then maybe we can pick up with.
We'll call this video a slow start again. This was a slow start, but I feel like we reached some depth at the end of it that was pretty useful and worth reflecting on. So,
yeah, I agree.
Go ahead and send us your questions, your queries to. I screwed it up last time, and as noted above, I'm an idiot. So what's the email address? It's theshitshow.rocks at gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Maybe she's the idiot too, but I'm pretty sure that's right. See you next time.
See ya.
So dumb, dude.
Oh, how do I shut this off?
Pause the damn video, Heather!
Okay, I'm gonna get out and stop it. Oh, you're gonna hit it and you're gonna make it work?